Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. Kevin and Angel here. And today we're going to be talking about my favorite topic, and that is sales. Now, more particularly, what we're going to be talking about is how you can outsell a crappy marketing strategy, but what you can't do is out market a crappy sales process. So I think I got that right. But
that was
Angel,
a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, but Angel, I want to get your feedback on that and just kind of hear what you have to say about that. And then I definitely have some ideas and kind of can go a little bit more in depth, but I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, I feel like we definitely see this firsthand and what I mean by that is people's mindset around how marketing and their sales process works. Oftentimes people come to us and they want to hire us for their marketing and they're like, that's all I need. I just need leads. Like, as long as I have the phone ringing and calls coming in, people needing training, like, I'm good. But obviously we do a lot more than that. And so by having these conversations with people and just kind of being very much a part of the entire process, like knowing what their conversion rate is, knowing like what sales they're making and stuff like that, because obviously that's all stuff that we ask. All of that stuff matters. And so when we talk to someone who we find out hasn't made any sales this week or this month or whatever, obviously we can kind of like compare just based on the number of leads that they've gotten in and just kind of like seeing how phone conversations are going and all of that. So we like to take a deeper look into it. And I always tell people, like, let's kind of like work backwards here. Like, you're telling me that you think the issue is here, but we want to take a look at literally every step of this process, including when it comes back to us and the job that we're doing for you. And so we'll kind of like backtrack a little bit, and maybe we find an issue where it's like, oh, you're not answering any of your phone calls. That could be a reason why you're having an issue actually setting consultations, because no one's answering the phone when you reach back out to them. And I used to always hear this as a dog trainer. I know a lot of our clients hear this too when they answer the phone and the person on the other line says, oh, I'm glad that someone finally answered the phone, or you were the first person to answer, or something like that. And so again, we'll just kind of like backtrack and really break down what their entire process is, from answering the phone to leading that short, structured conversation on the phone, scheduling the consultation, and all that kind of stuff. So there's different jobs basically in your business that you're having to do. And if you're just trying to like shortcut the whole process by, oh, I'm not going to answer this phone, I'll just miss it, and then I'll shoot them a text. If they're truly interested, then, they'll answer their phone or they'll call me back, and then I'll try to sell them over the phone. And so yeah, that is a very big part of our job, I would say, is really getting people to understand that whole process and convince them the important parts of simply just answering your phone or having like a structured conversation on the phone. And, that is the first impression that you're making. So like me personally, if I were to call somewhere, and so I don't know shit about cars, right? So if I were to like call a mechanic and it's just like a 2-minute conversation and I don't know anything. I don't know what to ask. So I'm just, I'm probably going to ask something stupid like, hey, how much would it be to stop this dinging noise in my car? They are probably going to be like, this freaking idiot. But that's all I know. So if I spend like a 2-minute conversation with them and then they are just like super quick to get off the phone, and I've left that conversation being told like, that could range anywhere from like $800 to maybe $7,000. I'm going to be like, holy shit, could I afford something that's $800 today? Like, sure, but knowing there's such a big range or even knowing, that much money goes into it, I might be like, that's ridiculous. Let me call around. But that's because I don't know anything. And so I think that's super important to take into consideration is that people don't know what they don't know. And I think it's easy too for people, the dog training business owners specifically, especially when you're just getting burnt out with people and certain types of people and just burnt out with running a business or training dogs in general. You can kind of lose sight of that and start having like less of a tolerance for people who are just like, going right to like, how much is it going to be? How much is it going to be? But I think it's very important to still have like that understanding and empathy with people, knowing like they don't know anything about training. They don't know what to ask. So I know I just went on a tangent there, but yeah, there's so many like different structured parts of the sales process that so many people forget. And that is, again, one of the biggest things that we try to coach people on.
Yeah, really well said. And I guess the reason that I was thinking about this topic and I had written it down on the notes app on my phone is because I was thinking about how there's people that have come to us and work with us that they built a solid business just by being good salespeople. And you can go out and just bring your dog to the Home Depot or Lowe's, Tractor Supply, and just start conversations. We have a client who moved his business recently and, we're getting the ads rolling and stuff like that. And so they've been, it's like ramping up. We've gotten our first couple leads and he's like texting me. He's like, "Hey, I just made a sale. Just close this person here, close this person here." And that's what made me really think about this, how, he's moved to a new place and he's already making sales just by striking up conversations and, sending consultations that way and making sales. Now, obviously, his business, the way he's going to take that business to go from making 5 grand, 10 grand a month to making 100 grand a month is going to be having a more consistent, reliable, predictable acquisition system like paid advertising. But it does prove the point that if you have a good sales process, if you're good at sales, you can go out and like market yourself. Let me get my fingers in frame, market yourself
Hmm.
and sell at the same time. Like good marketing is also really good sales. Like really good marketers, they're just selling on video or in an ad to like anyone who's watching that video. It's still like kind of like a form of sales, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I just think that's important to kind of think about how if you're really good at sales, you can go out and drum up business. If you're really bad at sales, it doesn't matter how much business is coming to you because if you're really bad at sales, none of it's going to close anyway.
Hmm.
And so I also heard Alex Hormozy talking about this earlier on. It's like a lot of people treat their leads, all leads, like they're warm leads, like they're word of mouth referral leads. And you can close warm leads with a cold lead sales process, but what you can't do is close cold leads with a warm lead sales process. So what I mean
Mm.
by that is like the stuff that you can get away with doing, when you have a warm lead is like getting on a phone call saying like, "Oh yeah, we did train, your friend's dog 6 months ago. I remember Sparky, and yeah, sure, we can help you out too." What's so funny about the name Sparky? Does no one name their dog Sparky?
Nope,
Anyway,
you're good.
but anyway, yeah, we can help you out. And here's how much it's going to be. And that person largely already kind of knew the cost and stuff like that. And I think that's what people think that sales is. And
Hmm.
that is like a warm lead sales process. Now, I wouldn't even recommend doing it that way, even if they are a warm lead. I would still give them more time to let the conversation unfold and build trust and rapport because you can lose leads that way. Any type of lead can be lost that way. But you certainly are not going to be able to close cold traffic doing it that way. It just doesn't work. And I've
Yeah.
had quite a few conversations this week. Had a 2-hour phone call earlier this week with the client talking about this. And yeah, I think that there's a misconception, unfortunately, for a lot of people where they want the business to be one way and it's just not that way. It's a different way. And the different way requires more effort, more trust and rapport building. And more specifically, just to give anyone kind of like insight into what I'm talking about here, what I'm talking about is getting a lead off of like a paid ad, or even just someone found your Google business profile or your website online or your social media profile, and they're calling you. And then within a couple minutes, they ask you the price and you price drop. It's just never going to work. And the
Hmm.
problem is, let me rephrase that because I think some people can hear that and say it works for me. It's not going to work as well as doing it the other way and taking the time to build trust and build rapport. And this is what I mean by people want it to be a certain way, but it's just not that way. And, if you want to have a business where you're closing a majority of your leads, not just the lay down sales, but the people who are like price shoppers, the people
Mhm.
who are tire kickers, like if you want to know how to convert those people and make them stop shopping around for price and actually buy from you, it rests in your sales process and figuring out exactly how you get them to do that. So, with that being said, Angel, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you really just it comes down to you really just have to do what works and do what you have to do. Like some people do strictly do phone sales, and if it works for you and you have a really good conversion rate, then by all means. But at the end of the day, like if you're not making sales, then do something different. You know what I mean? And building rapport, especially when you're selling something for hundreds and thousands of dollars, building rapport is the most important thing to do. And so sometimes people will do, a certain process that has worked for them before, whether it's something that worked in like an old business or something that worked for a business that they worked for previously before they started their own, or maybe even like a totally different market. Maybe like they moved and they were in a different market or something like that. Doing something one time that has worked for you and then all of a sudden you're noticing that it's not. Now other things can come into play too, right? Like burnout, and you find yourself just like getting off the phone a lot quicker or just not answering the phone, or you had like a really good couple of weeks of making sales and then you start to get a little bit lazy with it, and you're like, okay, let me just start trying to like qualify people over the phone because I've been really busy. But then you start doing that and you get used to it and you just get in like these bad habits that, and you realize like it's not actually working every time. So like anything in life, if something isn't working, try something new. You can't just keep doing it over and over and over and refusing to change your process, but then blaming it on the people who are needing the service. Because I think, people being concerned about money is so fair. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the irony of it is, it's the way that you view money. I think you kind of attract those types of clients as well. Like if you're the ultimate budget shopper, like you should understand better than anybody why somebody's going to bat an eye when you tell them it's going to be $2,000, $4,000, right?
Hmm.
Like put yourself in their shoes. Like how would you feel if you were not a dog trainer and didn't know and, in a way didn't feel like entitled to charging that amount of money because other people are charging it? How would you feel if, you kind of got caught off guard and thought maybe this is going to be like a $25 an hour thing and now all of a sudden you're finding it's actually going to cost you 4 grand? You'd
Hmm.
probably need to think about it. And so, again, if you give yourself the time and the space and get in front of these people and, actually take the time to explain to them everything that you do, what makes you different, build that trust with them, then it gives you the opportunity to negotiate at the end. If they say, oh, that's a lot of money, I can't afford that, then you can handle those objections. But if you get on a phone call with somebody and within 2 minutes you're giving them the price, good luck trying to handle objections at that point
Hmm.
because they're just going to want to get off the phone with you. They're like, this is insane. I'm done with this conversation. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it boils down to just, like you were saying, and, I had said before as well, it's going to take you changing things in your business. You can't just keep doing things the same way and have it not work, but then like hold on to like, but it used to work, Like
Hmm.
I'm in a community and I meet with a couple times a week, a couple of people who they're very successful entrepreneurs. And I've heard, guys who own businesses talk about this, that they're like, this ad used to work. Like this ad used to crush for me. It used to get me like a 15 times ROAS. Like every dollar I would put in, I would make $15. So every thousand I put in, I would make every thousand I put in, I would make 15,000 and so on and so forth, right? And you can see like with the 15 times multiplication on your dollar, like how you can just scale that up and be making $1 million a month. But then it stops working and they're like trying to force it to work and it's losing money. And they're like, something's changed here. This has to work. It's worked for so long.
Hmm.
And the person who owns the community, it hit me like a ton of bricks when he said it. He was like, yeah, man, you just need to look at it like it was great while it lasted. It was a fun ride, but it's over. And now you got to figure out the next thing. And
Yeah.
so for a lot of people, if you used to be able to do phone sales, or you used to be able to just get all these leads coming in and that, they would just close and over the phone quickly, and you didn't need to do all this trust and rapport building, and that doesn't work anymore. You need to take a hard, honest look at the market and go like, are there people that are doing consultations that are doing it differently than me? There's probably a shift in that capacity where like people, you're not the only one that they're talking to anymore. And so because you're not the only one that they're talking to, you're competing against somebody else and they're doing the things that you're unwilling to do. And by definition, since they're willing to do that stuff, they're the one getting the business. And so you
Mhm.
need to figure out like what that is. And if something's not working, take a look at the people who are already succeeding and are getting the business, reverse engineer what they're doing. And it's not a matter of like, if I need to do what they're doing or do I need to compete with that? It's a matter of like, how long can I get away with not doing it? How long is my business going to last? How long are my doors going to stay open if I don't adapt and do these things?
Mhm. Yeah, something that I thought about was, and depending on the year that our listeners were born, they may or may not understand this reference, but just like putting an ad out in a Yellow Pages book doesn't work anymore. People aren't like still doing it and being like, why isn't anyone calling me from the phone book? Like it's
Yeah,
just not a thing anymore. It doesn't work.
totally.
So yeah, that example kind of popped up in my head. It's a little bit extreme, but things change. The market changes,
Hmm.
people change. Also, people's expectations on what they want from a business change. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Like consultations, for example. Like there's so many businesses out there that do consultations, and they're like I've talked to some people on the phone who have like just straight up asked about a consultation without even knowing that it was a part of the process, but like they're expecting that because it's like you're taking my dog, I need to be able to meet you, I want you to meet my dog, I need to see like how you're interacting with that dog, so or with my dog. And so there's so many businesses out there that do consultations, and if you're not and you're just like short circuiting the process, obviously you're going to see some different results.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and another thing, that came to mind for me is we've become much more picky about who we work with as clients now. Me in particular, since I, do still handle all of our sales and stuff like that. We really don't like working with people who aren't open to having a real sales process because here's the thing, it's just not going to work. And
Mhm.
I've really grappled with this for like, since 2020 when I started this business where it's like, well, maybe some people can get away with it, and some people are just good at sales, but it almost in a weird way, like, makes me cringe now. When I hear somebody say to me, like, when they're if someone okay, let me start with this. We have clients that we just signed up who do phone sales, and they're murdering it. They're destroying. They're making, like, 100 grand in, like, a week or something like that, right? But they have this entire previous career in sales in corporate America, selling deals that are not $1,000, not $10,000, but like $100,000 plus, $1 million contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts. And so to them, like this is like like doing this is like the back of their hand. They know how to do it,
Mhm.
right? But when I get somebody who's like a new dog trainer and their revenue is like so fluctuating between like 1,000, $2,000, maybe they've had a $4 or $5,000 month, and maybe they've had one really good months ago, and it was 10 grand, and they're like, oh no, trust me, dude, I can close everybody over the phone. I'm just like, man, you think that because you're used to a certain type of traffic. It's all word of mouth referrals coming into you. And then when I let that go and I don't really handle that objection and I don't make people really understand like, hey, in the beginning there's going to be more required of you here. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy every time where in like 30 days they're just like the leads are no good.
Mhm.
And the thing that I always think is so fascinating is because our marketing is done, a lot of our marketing is organic through, Facebook and stuff like that. I'll have DM conversations or even phone calls with people. And, we probably don't end up working with some of these people because, we already have clients in their market or something like that. Or I just turn them away because I'm like, hey, I don't feel like we can actually help you. But I remember one in particular that I had a couple months ago, and thinking to myself, they were unwilling to do consultations, and they wanted to just like, do the typical like get on the phone call on their own time and stuff like that and just do it how they wanted to do it. And they weren't having success. And they were telling me they were like unwilling to go and do actual in-person consultations. And what I was thinking to myself is, I know who you're competing against. And I know the extent of what they need to do in order to make sales. And I know how much revenue they're doing. I know how successful they are. And all I could think about is like, if you do it that way, the person that we work with currently is going to eat your lunch. There's just no way that you can actually compete with them. And so with that being said, I mean, it's just important to kind of reflect on that and go like, who's in my market? What are they doing? Is this actually ever going to get it done? So I think we're having some technical difficulties here, and Angel got kicked out of the meeting, but we're almost at the hour. So I think what I'll do is just finish this up, and then I'll connect with her afterwards. But yeah, so I mean, this is all just to say that, it's important to have a legit sales process and evaluate what's going on in your market, what other people are doing. Because if you don't, and you just do it your way because you want to do it that way, then you need to be able to live and die with the results that you're going to get. And the results maybe, and most times, statistically speaking, the results are not going to be good. So Angel, I know you cut out there for a little bit. So I was just going on a tear
Yeah.
there for
Sorry
like
about
25
that.
minutes. It's all good. But you're back now. So what do you, I'm sure you kind of caught the gist of what I was saying there. And what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, well, earlier in that, you talked about some of our new clients who are doing absolutely fantastic. And yes, true story, almost 100,000 in a week. But I just talked to these clients the other day, and the husband, it's a couple who kind of runs a business. The guy, he's very blunt, and he knows that. He's told me that. And he's kind of given me an example of like how his conversations go a little bit. And even before that, like I knew he was a more like blunt person. And you don't necessarily have to have that type of personality or in the way that you speak to people, but he is that way naturally. And so I think that is in addition to his, background in sales, that he can use that in his favor, and that helps with actually having a sales process. Because I tell people all the time, like, when you're on the phone, don't let someone call you, ask questions, and you just answer them, and then like you get off the phone. Someone's going to call with a question, of course, but you need to be the one to lead that conversation. You are the business owner. It is your business. Like, you should have a structured process of how that goes. You need to be the one leading the conversation and saying like you can answer some questions, but the next step, like, this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to go. This is why we do it. Um, and that's kind of like what he does is, he has like a very specific process on how he handles those phone calls. And he's like, this is what we're going to do. We need to make sure that we are a good fit for each other. And so, yeah, again, like I tell people, don't let the person who's calling you lead the conversation, because unless they already know who you are, like it's a referral, they're not just going to call you and ask you a question and be like, cool, let me pay for that. And they're just the one leading the entire conversation. Like, again, lead, have structure to the conversation, and tell them this is how it's going to go. Because if you do that, they're really not going to have a choice but to go along with the process. But if you just leave everything optional, and like, maybe we can do this, or we can do this if you want, like if you have time, you're leaving everything optional for them, and obviously they're going to choose the most convenient route, which is to not meet up with you in person, or not invite you into their home, or not pay you $4,000 over the phone.
And then this is how the conversation goes. Like, the dog trainer answers the phone. The first person is like, "Hi, I'm just calling around. Do you guys do dog training?" "Yes, we do." "Okay, cool. Can you tell me how much that costs?" And then you're immediately backpedaling. You're immediately trying to like skirt around that, or like, what do I say? And sometimes people are going to like ask that question anyway, even if you do a good job at this and controlling the conversation from the beginning. But you just need to be willing to be, unwilling to give the price.
Hmm.
That's really what it comes down to. And, people say to me like, that's awkward. And I feel like they're asking me, so I need to tell them. It's like, no, you don't. You don't need to do anything you don't want to do. And in a weird way, by telling them, it's like you kind of want to tell them. So just make up your mind. I don't want to tell them. I don't tell them. It's not what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And so have a hard and fast rule in your business. Like, I do not give pricing over a phone call. And I'm certainly, if I'm going to give it over the phone call, I'm certainly not going to drop it within the first 5 minutes of the conversation. I'm not even going to drop it within the first 10 minutes. You're not going to hear a price until we've been talking for 35 minutes. Right.
Yep.
And so the way that you handle that is just by asking them another question. So you don't want to pretend like you're ignoring it, but you just say to them when they say, can you just tell me what the price is? I just kind of calling around for prices. So like, sure thing. We can definitely get into that. I just need to ask you a couple questions first so I can really see what's going on here. Can you tell me a little bit about your dog? And they'll just start talking. And just like that, you're no longer talking about price. And so that's exactly how you handle that. And then from there, what we always teach people is like set in-person consultations, right? For 99% of dog trainers out there, if you guys get in front of your leads, you'll close like 60% of them or 50%, 40%, worst case scenario, really closer to like 60, 70. We have clients that close like 85, 90% of their leads. And, one of our clients I was talking to the other day, she was saying to me like, hey, I'm not sure, I do sales over the phone and I'm not even sure if I do that well in person. And we looked at her numbers. And when we evaluated the numbers, she was closing 75 to 80% of her leads. And what I always think about is like, if you had a 75 to 80% chance to just show up at somebody's house and they're going to hand you, a check for anywhere between $2,500 to $4,500, like I would do that every day of my life. It's how I would spend all of my time.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, people think like, well, I don't want to drive there and spend the hour and then have to drive back. And what if I don't get paid? It's like, this is why you have to track your numbers, because it's okay if you do 10 of them and the first 2.5, the first 2 or 3 don't buy from you. Because guess what? Statistically, the next 7 are, the next 8 are. And what that means is if you're selling a program for $3,000 on average, you just made between $21,000 to $24,000. And you can just rinse, wash, repeat that every single month. It's like, you don't need to do 100 of them. Do 10 of them. Know your average ticket program, know what your closing rate is when you get in front of people, and you have a mathematical equation of this is the most effective way for me to get to 20K a month.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you make it emotional and you're like, what if I go out there and I don't get paid? It's like, what if my heart just stops beating right now? Anything can happen in life.
Yeah.
But like, you have to understand that like statistically, that's not going to happen. Knock on wood. Watch me die right now on this podcast. But that's the way I think about this is like, as soon as you make it emotional, you've completely lost already. You need to make it data driven. You need to be scientific about your approach. And as soon as you do that, you start really being able to grow and scale your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's that for today. I think we both have to run to another meeting here. But with that being said, I hope you guys got some value out of this. So if there's anything you want to hear about or you feel like this was helpful for you, just let us know and share this with a friend. We always love to get this out to more dog trainers across the US and even abroad. So with that being said, I'm going to end things here, but appreciate you guys as always. And we will see you guys all very soon in the next